Well, it is morning. Good morning. More or less at 10, a little late today because I had an important phone call that came in, like around 9:20 or so. And anyway, that was it was something I needed to do. So it was a good conversation with my son in Germany. They just had a baby a couple of days ago. So it's the first time we had a chance to talk since then. But I won't go into a lot of personal details because that's not what this is about. I'm just letting you know that's why I'm late. Yep, I'm going to get a flip done pretty soon. What I want to do is recap some of the things I accomplished over the last week or so, other than Submarine Wednesday, where I've been painting tiny little dots of paint on things and some green and brown stuff here and there, and sometimes the wrong color. We got Landris Maximus Sharkandia here. That's done. And I think that came out okay. It was a fairly simple kind of paint job, except that it required some, shading and detailing that I kind of figured out how to do by accident, really. It turned out okay. And I'm not going to do that. I'm not. No, don't, no, stop. No, can't help myself. Okay, got that over with. So I'm going to put that aside. But you too, if you spend enough viewing points, if you accumulate them and spend them, you can name something that I'm painting. You can do that by cashing things in. I also managed earlier than that to finish the saxophone playing Badger. And that came out okay. Looks like sort of a badger, has a really cool hat. That's the important thing. It's the coolness of the hat. And we'll see if that ever shows up in one of our streams or anything. Hi, Wild Hattie. Oh, thanks for joining in. Really appreciate it. Yep. So this might be a transmogrification of one of our player characters. So that came through okay. I really like the shark. I have to do this. Oh no, there it goes again. If I just leave the shark alone, if I put it out of reach, that won't happen again. Maybe. The last thing I was working on was the demon frog. And the demon frog became friends with Landris Maximus, because Landris Maximus emerged from the grassy plain right near the demon frog. I'm not sure I want to mess around with this too terribly much more. There was a suggestion of putting more highlights on the tips of the spines, but I think there's one thing I need to fix. I failed to paint two of the toes down here. I need to do that with the yellow speed paint, and then I need to let that dry enough to paint the rest of this. I'm going to do the same thing I did with the shark, which is painted green and then put a green wash on it to make it look not quite so bland. That's not it. All of these have their zealot yellow. There's this, you can hardly see it, but I noticed it when I moved it around, that it's right rear foot. You're in Scotland. I love Scotland. Where in Scotland are you? Wow, neat. Yeah, we've been to Scotland a couple of times. Well, that's the best part about it, is if there's nothing there. That I really am jealous about that. That sounds... Well, we live in the woods here too. It's not quite as isolated, but living in the woods is really kind of nice. but you've also got a subway, which means you've got a way to get around. My brother lives in northern Wisconsin, and he is 8 miles from the nearest town, and the town has a gas station, a post office, a very small branch of a bank, 4 taverns. That's important. I mean, you have them post, but we have taverns. And during the summer, like a drive-in ice cream hot dog place, and that's it. Otherwise, it's another 15 miles to any place that has a grocery store. But yeah, Scotland is just an amazing place. So are y'all going to leave? No, I shouldn't get into politics. I'm not going to do that. Maybe I will. I get it. I have to wander off into something. So you're going to leave Great Britain finally? You're going to tell those Englanders? Steep hill. Oh, great. Yeah, it's an interesting political time. Your SNP just had a terrible time of it. It was really kind of sad. I actually read some international news services because here in the States, we have 24-hour news, but there's no news on the 24-hour news. We just learn, you get 4 days of a submarine thing is lost, that kind of thing, right? But I read some of the international news sites, and that was quite an ordeal. I hope that wasn't bad in Scotland. I mean, you don't get a sense of what it's like locally when something like that happens. So I don't know if the Labour Party is going to be any better for you guys or not. I don't know. But you live in a place, thankfully, you live in a place where you actually can talk about politics and not go to prison or something, which is not the case in other places. So if you want to talk about politics, that would be great. If not, that's perfectly fine too. We can talk about relaxing painting on Dice and Dungeons. Okay. Yeah, I've been reading about Yusuf. He seems to be okay. But was she doing a puppet show? Is puppet show slang for something that I don't understand? Was she just visiting us? She just like part of the audience at a puppet show? Okay, that's pretty cool. So speaking of puppets, on our D&D campaign, we have actually introduced a puppet. I acquired a sea otter as a pet on one of our voyages, and our druid made the sea otter sentient. So we have Artemore, who is now a sentient sea otter, and I got a puppet because, if you got a sentient sea otter, you can't. I was doing this, this was the sea otter for a while, and although it's really cute and all, even if you painted little eyeballs on it, it isn't the same. So and Artemore has actually appeared a couple of times. Ardmore has also shown up on some of our improv warm-ups. Yeah, that would be. Oh yeah, that would be cool. But no, it's a sea otter, and the sea otter is absolutely adorable, and I love playing the sea otter. And one of our characters, the Tabaxi Bard Nines, hates the sea otter. I don't know why. There seems to be something going on there, some sort of jealousy thing. I'm not sure, but there's a certain dynamic that's emerging. But Gilly, I have heard the word Gilly, but I'm like over 70 years old and I can't remember things. So remind me what a Gilly is. Okay. That might be how this is going to end up looking. This beast. I've been okay. So is that like somebody you hired to be a Gilly? Maybe that's where I heard it. Maybe so. When we were in Scotland, my daughter and I got to go hawking. There was a place that you went to, and they showed you how to bird. You know, put a bird on, and they use Harris hawks. And we went hawking, and I think the person who was with us was called a Gilly. I'm not sure. So I'm going to bring this other thing in. This is something that Nicole did a long time ago. This is a giant fungus tree. And I have been instructed owls hate you. We have an owl near us. Actually, a pair of owls. And they fly through every once in a while. And we've had them sit in our tree, not more like 10 feet away from the window. It's really cool. Oh yeah, you're right though. The demon. Well, the shark was supposed to be in the water, and then somebody spent 10,000 viewing points to name it a land shark, Landros maximus, and the demon frog really should be coming out of lava, but that same person demanded that it be a friend of the shark in the same plane. So, but the thing about paints is that if you get tired of it being in a green meadow, can always just repaint it, and then it can be coming out of lava. Looks pretty demony though, doesn't it? I think I got the beady red eyes pretty well, and then the speed paints worked. The speed paints worked pretty well, but this could just as easily be reprimed, and it could just turn into like a green frog that has a skin condition, as opposed to kind of a demony frog. It might even be a toad. But the yellow and the orange and the red blended into each other, I think, pretty well. If it's a toad, it doesn't have to be shiny. If it's a frog, I really should spray it with like a clear gloss or semi-gloss varnish. But I'm not going to do that because I'm just not going to. um, I'm mixing some paint here. This is the green that I'm going to be using on the base, and I have to use a little brush to get most of this base in because I have to reach way underneath there, underneath the frog body and around the feet, the little toes. I don't want to get those all green, so I'm actually going to have to pay attention as I paint the base, which is always a pain. And then end up, I think, with this fungal monster. It could be mud. I could paint it brown, but I made a commitment on Monday that it would be matching the land shark because they met each other. It was kind of like whoosh, the land shark emerges and frog becomes startled. Ah, what was that? It's like, where am I? You are in my meadow. Why am I in your meadow? I don't know why. Oh, now I recall. I was banished from the sea by Sturmgrimmy. Sturmgrimmy is a major character, recurring NPC character in our D&D campaign. Oh, that sounds terrible. Yes, I hate being on land, but now I am a land shark. Oh, well, being on land is not so bad. You want to be friends? Okay. That's the kind of thing that I do on relaxing painting instead of relaxing. Oh, there it goes. Dup, 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 dup. Yep. Do you? Yeah, I can't believe I did that, but why not? So, stir up this green paint. So what's going to happen now is, since I have trifocals, is the only thing that focuses close up is the very, very bottom of these lenses, and that would mean that I have to be looking up and down at the same time while I'm painting, so I can't. So I take my glasses off so I can sort of see up close, because I'm nearsighted, which means I can see clearly for about 8 inches. I can read chat. Sometimes I have a large print version of the chat window up to the side, which is why I keep looking over there, which allows me to read chat without my glasses on. Otherwise, on the screen that I'm looking at here, which is similar, which I think is a facsimile of what you see when you're watching the stream, the chat print is way, way too small. I can tell that they're letters, but I can't really even tell what language they're in. So in order to accommodate my poor vision, I have a large print version of the chat window over to the side, which I didn't get working this morning. It didn't work. But somebody who knows what they're doing happened to come by and go, oh, and just clicked on something and moved it, and then it was fine. I was clicking on things too, but obviously clicking on the wrong things because it wasn't working. Okay. Painting around these back feet is going to be a pain in the... Sometimes... Yeah, actually, that does. I mean, it makes it look like you're shouting, right? That's like an impolite thing to do, but it does help. And I can't get a brush there. Okay, this is going to be quite a reach. that paint where I didn't want it, but see that very much. So painting the base of these things is supposed to be like a really, it's the very last thing you do. It's supposed to be simple and easy compared to painting the rest, but that is not what's happening. It now has a green toe. Its rear toes is now green. Yep. I don't know if I'm going to fix that or not. What I would need to do is, since those speed paints are translucent, need to repaint that the primer color and then do the speed paint on that. If you look at it from the side, it's an obvious flaw, which is unfortunate. Just could not get the brush there. Well, I'll tell the story of Dice and Dungeons, and then also about how I got into it, because, of my demographic, right? Maybe I'll start with that. I actually got involved in D&D when it first started. I was in Madison, Wisconsin, going to school there in the 1970s. And a group of people that we knew started playing D&D. And this was, I don't know if it was like the original, very, very first version 1. It was really close to it. We actually still have, that we bought at the time and have saved, one of the very, very first boxed sets of D&D. I think the first ones came out in just like a baggy kind of, but the very, very first box set with a printed cover, it still had what they called the crayon dice or something in it. Still have that, and it's like in mint condition because we when we played it, we always put it all back the way it was. So I got into it in graduate school in Madison in 1974 or something like that. And in fact, and I've told this story before, but I'll tell it again, I was involved in one of the very, very first broadcasts. It wasn't a stream or anything back in the 70s. Cable TV was a new thing. And the cable providers needed to provide at least one community access channel. And this group of people that I played with got scheduled to use the community access channel. And it was either Friday or Saturday nights. I forget which one it was. So we would start like at about 8 o'clock. We had 2 cameras, and I think 4 people were playing with a DM. And I worked one of the cameras. And then there was like a producer who decided where do you aim the cameras? Okay. Camera 1, look at this. Camera 2, look at this. Basically, there were 2 cameras. That was it. So it wasn't really complicated. It was just one camera or the other. So pretty much we had one camera on the players, and the other camera was on the die. And in order to make it work for television, instead of a D20, the camera. We couldn't do the close up of a dice roll, so we did a Wheel of Fortune spinner thing, the 1 to 20 on it. And when it came time to roll the die, the player just spun the wheel. And that worked pretty well. So yeah, I started on a D&D broadcast career before there was such a thing, practically. It was pretty fun. So yeah, we'd start like at 8, and then we'd play for a couple of hours. And back then, there wasn't much to it. You'd meet in a tavern, and then you'd go out on a quest. It's fine doing the lowercase. Yeah, the Warhammer. The Warhammer is another story. But yeah, so anyway, we started playing, and they were pretty simple things. We'd go meet at a tavern, and the party would go out and fight some gnolls or something, and then one of the party members would get killed, and did that for about 2 hours, and then we had pizza, and then would broadcast again for a little while. I don't know. There it is. I don't know if anybody ever watched. There was no way of telling, and it was a community access channel, like on a night in a college town. And I'm thinking, everybody was just out getting drunk, right? And they probably weren't going to be watching some people play Dungeons and Dragons, whatever that was, pretending to be orcs and elves and whatever. But we did that for many months. It was every week for a couple of months. It was a lot of fun. And that's how I got involved in Dungeons and Dragons. And then, kind of played periodically ever since. Dice and Dungeons started about a year and a half ago. And the campaign is, it's moving along pretty well. It's in a world that our DM created. It's a very creative kind of place. We have a lot of fun. It's not all combat. We do a lot of like retail shopping. Right, Bufo. Bob Ross. Somebody said I was the Bob Ross of painting D&D figures. I took that as a compliment. Recently, though, not that, we're promoting any particular TV show or anything, been watching James May, Oh Cook. And James May was, one of the people on Top Gear. I don't know if you've ever been into that or watched it. But I noticed that the stream. Yes. Yes, so James May does Oh Cook, and I've been watching that. It's a really fun cooking show. And as he's cooking, I noticed that he talks about what he's cooking, but he also sometimes just wanders off onto, talking about other things that just pop into his head. And it's sort of like that here, too. So what I really could do is I'm talking about how I got into Dungeons and Dragons back in 1970 something, 74 or 5, when it first came out, and doing a D&D broadcast. Yeah, James May has. Yeah, there is that. And I was kind of like his deadpan, and Dr. Slow or Mr. Slow. But the other thing about it was that when we finished the session, sometimes it was like 1 a.m. or whatever we finally finished, because, you know, I think when you're eating pizza and playing Dungeons and Dragons, time goes by. There was a donut shop. I mean, not like a Dunkin' Donuts shop or something like that. It was a donut factory, really. It's a donut bakery where they made donuts. And they were making donuts for the next morning. And so, like at 2 a.m, their first donuts were coming off of whatever the donut fryer thing was. And we would stop on our way out, because it was right near the community access studio, and then get ourselves a dozen freshly made donuts. It was always, it's always a fun thing to do too. What does that have to do with Dungeons and Dragons? What it has to do with is that food is an important part of D&D. And if you ever to watch our stream of the D&D, which streams with a live chat on Sundays at 2, and you can catch it on YouTube and as a podcast, we do spend a lot of time looking for food, buying food, finding food. We have a thing for pretzels. Sometimes the pretzels are terrible. Sometimes the pretzels are so good we have a pretzel day. What we don't do, though, and I don't know why this doesn't happen, is we talk about food all the time, and we talk about eating food all the time. But during our stream, we don't really eat snacks. So it's almost like it isn't real. Yeah, but we, if you're not munching on chips or crisps, as I guess you call them there, and doing that, and we just haven't done it. It's been like 1 million episodes already, and we have yet to eat on screen. I think what our DM said was that, especially if you eat crunchy snacks like crisps and these cheesy, airy puffs and things, that the microphones don't like it. We wouldn't want to disturb the microphones. That kind of thing. I don't know. There's some excuse about why we're not having snacks. I didn't know that either. You can get gout from celery. I mean, celery is really good. It's crunchy. It's fresh tasting. It's a vegetable, so it must be good for you. Wow. I've never had that much celery. I really almost hate to think about how much celery it would take to give oneself gout. Where did those spots come from? Like little yellow spots on the side of the demon frog there. See if I can cover those up. Tiny, tiny little spots. I just can hardly see them. I'm reaching over to the paint I should show you these. Our DM made these on our 3D printer. These are really cool. I can get the camera to aim at them there. So when you get the PLA for the printer, you get these spools, right? And then what she printed were these inserts. You can see this is a bicolor one, so you can see how they work with these holes in it that are just the right size for these paint bottles. And then she made a spindle. Yeah, that's what I've been told. That celery is just crunchy. That's it. Nothing. Anyway, yeah. So what I was doing is I was reaching over and pulling a paint out of these. So those are really cool, and they hold the paint really well. Now I have to try to get this back. There we go. So what I discovered is, so there's two sizes, one for the squeeze bottle kind of paints, the Viejo paints, and then there's another one for these larger bottles of paint that we use a lot for dungeon tiles, because it's more economical to get larger quantities of that. But as I'm painting this, I discovered there's this spot there, like a dot, and it's really annoying. And it really is, to have that happen. So I'm going to just squeeze out a dot of this darker paint and see if I can cover it up. I don't know if it'll work or not. We'll find out. And if it works, then the dot will disappear. And if it doesn't, well, then it will become a permanent feature of the frog. I'm just letting the green paint. It's not. It didn't brush off before, but now it did. It isn't. It wasn't paint. It was just. It was just dust or something. Weird. Yeah. Sometimes it does work. Good old drunker. Well, that reminds me of your whiskey. So I don't know. Sometimes if you're actually in a place, you don't really enjoy the thing that everybody associates. With your country or place. Yeah, there is one. It's right there. I don't know if you can see it, but it is on there. And if I were really a good painter, I would probably highlight that somehow. And it's right there. And the one on this side is a little bit more visible. This is actually a pretty good print. I mean, it has the scaliness of the frog skin on it, but that's actually part of it. Okay, what I'm going to do with this green, once it dries a little bit more, is I'm going to take the dark green gray wash, this stuff, and just sort of splot it all over the surface of this so that it is not just so uniform. So it doesn't look quite so dull and bland. And the other thing is I'm going to need to start base coating this. And if I'm supposed to make it look kind of like the fungus tree that was done before, it looks like it's kind of a beige base coat with maybe kind of like red dribblings on it and things. And then its claws, the ends of its arms and claws and its horns and things would be more yellowish and greenish. We didn't have a lot of different color paints here. Yeah, the Wendigo, right. Oops, sorry, off camera. We didn't have a lot of different colors when we painted this, and we've since acquired quite a few more. So I think I'm going to use a slightly lighter color for the base than that. That'll give me more opportunity to the extent I can layer different colors on it. Maybe like even a little bit of greenish or something. And instead of just bright yellow, we've got my fungigo. Yes, because it's going to be fungusy. I've got my custom color chart here that I made by putting swatches of the paint on a piece of paper. Highly sophisticated. We've got a bunch of these kinds of yellowish brown colors, like this one here, or even kind of a brighter yellow like that, rather than just a flat yellow. So I'm not really sure how this is going to look. I've been told I'll do fine. I don't really believe that. One of our other members of Dyson Dungeons, Nicole, who plays Zoya Ansul, I use Viejo with these, both the game color and the model color. Acrylics, Viejos, and Tamiyas. I started using Tamiyas as an acrylic before we got into the other colors, because I would do like airplanes and ships and things. And their colors are largely designed for military models. But they don't have a big color range. Like you can't get a good pink or a purple, and their blues are pretty limited. So we've started getting the Viejos, and they have a lot of different colors. The Viejos also make a pretty nice metallic. Not that I'm pushing one brand or other. It's just what we happen to use. These metal colors, these airbrush metal colors, are really, really decent, especially if you're painting an airplane, that's aluminum, or as the rest of the world says, aluminium. Those metallics come in really different, bunch of like 5 different very subtle shades, from very bright chrome kind of to a dark steel. Basically the same paint with different amounts of dark pigment in it, but the effect is pretty neat, because then the panels that you're painting can be slightly different colors. Now, this thing is actually wearing some sort of loincloth. It's hard in the primer. It's kind of hard to see where the edges are, but I'm going to base coat practically everything in this kind of yeah, you can do that. But what I found, what's really interesting, what we found, especially with the Tamiyas, is that the color of the bottle cap, the color of the paint, that the thing that you print, and the actual color of the paint sometimes can be really different. And we were actually using we actually did that. We had a printout of the Tamiya paints colors, and we were using that to select them when we were buying them, and then started using them, and they weren't the same. So that's why we ended up doing our own paint swatches, just because the colors it just wasn't the same. And I don't know if it was because of the printer we had, or because of the No, I just can't say why. Just that the printout of the paint swatches did not match the color of the paint. Okay, so what I'm seeing here, and this has happened several times, we do these we print ourselves. This was done on a rosin printer across the hall here. And every once in a while, you just get these little bits of something that were either support structures or just a little bit of the rosin. Well, what I was starting to talk about well, thank you for that. I really appreciate it. Yeah, that's a possibility. Well, it would really be nice to get sponsored. But I'm not that terribly talented at painting. That's one of the things I discovered. I started building models when I was a kid. Okay, everybody in the 1950s, remember the 1950s? I bet you don't. You remember hearing about the 1950s. In the 1960s, anyway. In the late 50s and early 60s, I started building models and never really painted them at first. Back then, back in the day, the only paints you could really get were testers enamels. They didn't have acrylic paints really, at least not in the hobby shops anywhere near where I lived. And the enamel paints, they were almost all glossy. It was hard to get good flats. And they were not water soluble, so had to use denatured alcohol or isopropyl alcohol to clean anything. But I didn't really start painting anything until I was like in 7th or 8th grade, and there weren't any instructions or anything that I knew of. I found out later that there were books that one could read with techniques and stuff, but just never got those. So I did not develop some of the really cool shading and detailing techniques that Nicole developed, because she's actually a trained artist. Okay, right. So part of the problem is keeping things in frame, because I don't look up and then I don't know what's in frame and what isn't. Pogs. Oh, yeah. I remember Pogs. Kids had Pogs. Yep. And then Pogs were actually banned at the grade school in our area because kids started playing for keeps. Playing for keeps actually goes, we even had for keeps when I was a kid. But it wasn't with Pogs. It was like with trading cards, baseball cards and stuff, or marbles. Nobody does that anymore, playing marbles for keeps, which was always a dangerous thing to do because nobody had much money, and getting, a good shooter could set you back like 2 weeks allowance. And the last thing you wanted to do was lose that to some bully down the street because they talked you into playing for keeps. Oh, what is it? You chicken? Yeah, it is. I don't lose my marbles. But yeah, Pogs were banned at our grade school because people would play for keeps, and when if you're like in 4th grade or something, that can be a pretty traumatic experience. And then the parents would get upset because the kids wanted more and they lost them. And anyway, the only time you could play Pogs was friendly games at home. But that was a cool thing. Oh my. Yeah, the Pogs thing was pretty cool though. It was a slightly violent, or it could be a slightly violent sort of game, which was, that's not a bad thing to do. It's a lot better than beating each other up on the playground or something. But then, everybody's having a good old time until one thing happens to one kid. And I'm not saying that we should tolerate that or that it's a good thing at all. But sometimes just because one thing happens doesn't mean that the whole thing has to be banned forever. Maybe just be a little more careful next time, or just acknowledge that it was kind of a fluke or weird thing. Anyway, this painting show started, this relaxing painting with Dice and Dungeons, because during our D&D campaign, early on, we were playing, with we purchased figures for our own characters, but we were playing on like a 1x1 inch grid, plastic grid thing, which is a pretty common way to play. It's not a bad thing at all, but we wanted to get more elaborate. And our DM always wanted a 3D printer, so we actually got one and started printing dungeon tiles. I mean, like for a dungeon, stone walls, and some sort of scatter things like broken stone pillars and things like that. And we'd print them in gray, and then decided to paint them. That's when we got our first 4 colors of paint. Hadn't really done that kind of thing before because we didn't have a 3D printer, but we started printing these out and painting them. And it was suggested, the DM suggested, well, we're streaming our D&D show, and we have some equipment. Moving it off again. We have some equipment that we aren't using, like this little ring camera thing. Okay, we sort of started with things like that, and then got more and more sophisticated. So why don't we stream the painting? And I was like, why would we want to do that? And she was like, well, why not? Why wouldn't you want to do that? I said, I don't know. Why would I want to do that? And then why wouldn't you? And eventually it's not really a studio. It's just a kind of a workbench here. We started streaming the painting of our dungeon tiles. And that's how relaxing painting got started, is just streaming the preparation of the tiles that we ended up using in our D&D campaign. The Warhammer makes good paints, but I have to say that they're more expensive than a lot of others. So it's, and I think it kind of depends on what you're attempting to do with them too. Our family actually got into Warhammer when it first came out. Another one of those starters had a big starter kit. You could get a starter kit that had 3 races in it. There was I'm going to even paint the inside of the mouth here, and then I'm going to decide. Usually I would paint that red, but this is a fungus monster, so that might be painted kind of a yucky green or something in there. And so we used Warhammer paints for a good long time, painting the Citadel Warhammer paints, painting our Warhammer figures. I had orcs and goblins. My son had elves, and daughter had lizard people. So this doesn't cover that well, but it has a nice streaky look to it that actually, if I tried to make it look streaky like this, as opposed to it just not covering that well, it would have been really hard to do. But I think that gives it a really good look for when I start trying to paint fungusness on it. I'm not quite sure what to do with these. I think those are going to be kind of yellowish. Oh, did you work at a game store? Were you used to sell it? Mm-hmm. That's exactly right. These would be the little mycorrhizae down here. Yeah, Army Painter is, I know one of the people who watch this stream, old Brogger, uses Army Painter a lot. And I don't know, here at the hobby stores, I don't remember seeing it that much. They usually carry like 4 brands of something or other. I use a bunch of, like their paintbrush, right? But the Army Painter paints are pretty decent too. It's just it was just harder for us to get them. Okay, look at the time here. I can almost but not quite make out the clock. Okay, I'm going to let this dry before I start trying to layer any kind of paint on it. And use the opportunity to dab the dark green wash on this, and it changes the appearance quite a bit. Usually I'll go to about noon, 2 hours into it, and then I'll take a break. And then I always say, I actually, I have used, actually I have some down here that are like charcoals for some detailing. Charcoal pencils, because you can get a really nice fine point on them. And so sometimes when I'm doing really fine detail, I tried that, but they rub off. And I'm not always terribly careful where I put my fingers. Kind of surprisingly, I only have a little bit of paint on me today. But they rub off, and when I tried them, I ended up just smearing it. Technique wrong. What I have used, and I've used this mainly on the submarine. I can talk about my submarine Wednesday, is these really fine felt tip pens. Able to get tiny little dots on that. And I know that you can get, but I haven't invested in them. It's possible to get paint pens. I haven't seen them with points that small. The smallest one is like half a millimeter, maybe even less than that. And I'm able to do tiny, tiny little detail stuff on the submarine model I'm working on. Have our own custom mugs. You should. I am trying. That could be the catchphrase for like one of our D&D characters. I am trying. Could be mine. I play a furbog fighter, which is kind of a fun thing to do. In the past, when I've played D&D, I've played different character types. Usually, more often than not, I would play a cleric. I'm just sort of dabbing it on here. I want it to look kind of mottled, not modeled, but mottled, uneven. And I enjoyed playing a cleric because, as I would say, the power to heal is also the power to destroy, you know? And so oftentimes I would play a healer role, but then sometimes would get into a mood, you know, just enough of this being nice guy kind of thing. And then I could be like not really an evil cleric. Although that would be kind of fun, wouldn't it? Being a chaotic evil cleric. You catch people off guard anyway. You know, but I would do what I thought would be a helpful thing. Okay, so I was told that I did like the most horrifying thing ever as a cleric. So tell me if you think so. We were in a battle. We were in fight for our lives. Okay, and I don't know why we were fighting these creatures that they weren't quite golems. Okay, for some reason the DM made these things up. I don't know if they were a real D&D character or just something that she made up just to be evil. But they were like a combination, part stone, part organic. And as a cleric, I had stone shape, right? So since they had stone in them, I cast stone shape and basically pancaked them. I just said, I take the stone that's inside their bodies and I flatten it down to like a quarter of an inch. And, that won the battle, right? But somehow or other, that was considered by everybody in the party to be just a horrifying thing. And to this day, I don't understand. I saved the party. We won the battle. Anyway, that was one of the things I did that has become a legend of inappropriate action on the part of a cleric. Okay, so that this green wash, once it's on there, gives it some. It changes it, so it looks kind of cool. Yeah. So being an evil cleric it'd be cooler than being a paladin, right? Self-righteous paladins, that always happens. I got to play a paladin once. The campaign didn't last very long, but I really played up the only thing I do is I exist to fight evil. So I burst into a room and say, I am here to fight evil. Oh, no kidding. Way old version. That would have been fun to play. No, there wasn't much magic. There were like, 3 spells or something. I exaggerate, but there really wasn't very much. It was pretty much just, dwarves waving axes around and elves using swords, that kind of thing. I remember that from when we did the old stream on cable access, is that there wasn't very much magic. There was a lot of to prepare your spells ahead of time. You'd only cast the ones that you prepared. You didn't know what you're going to get into, so you lost a lot of spontaneity. So even if you had a spell book with some in, you couldn't really do very much with it. Yeah, I mean, that's what you had to do, is carry a whole bunch of those around so that you could play that way. I mean, it's much better if you just had the spells in your head, right? You know a spell, and as long as you've got the energy to cast it, if you're not half dead or something, you should be able to just do the spell. Okay, I think that's a pretty good base color. I don't know if I want to do all this really fine red striping on it, but it does look that way. It's like it has a really sinewy kind of body. So there's places where if I am really careful, I should be able to get some good line detailing on it. Thinking I kind of want to use, not sure I want that dark red, kind of an orangey, maybe. I don't know if this is going to work or not. I really don't. But I'm going to try it on one of the legs just to see how it looks. So this is kind of a brownish, orangish kind of color. And what I'm going to try to do is there's these contours where this kind of muscles are showing, kind of things. Is I'm going to use a really fine brush and try to put lines in them down the side, so it doesn't look like it's just painted on necessarily, but that it's part of the character of the model. And I'm going to try that on one leg and then see how it looks. I'm just really experimenting with it here. Anyway, I was saying before I started wandering off, is that the stream started because we were painting our own dungeon tiles, and I guess, they kind of show up underneath me. There's this scroll of things that are showing, and then we painted scatter. That was always fun, painting like barrels and bedstands and crypts, things like that. Things kind of set pieces, sleeping bags and tents and things like that. Ended up painting some of those, as well as the walls and floors. No, I haven't used yarn bands. Do you make tiny little scrolls out of little bits of paper? Do you really do that? I've got these things called it's called a head magnifier, and who keeps joking that it does not make my head any bigger, but it does let me see things that I would not ordinarily be able to see. And sometimes if my hand is steady enough, which it isn't always, I'm able to get the paint where I want it. So I don't know how this is going to look. I don't know if it's going to look fungusy or not. Okay, I'm going to take a break around noonish or so in about 45 minutes. So just so you know, I'll be gone then for a while. But yeah, thanks for lurking. Really appreciate it. And it's been good chatting with you. And you can talk more about Scotland when you get back. Because Scotland is amazing. This is almost, but not quite on screen. Yeah, I'm sure that was disorienting and disturbing. Now it's right in my face. I'm having a terrible time getting this set. Okay. Sorry about that. Maybe this will work if I can keep it on screen. Maybe not. No, I really can't tell if this is working. So what I think I'm going to do is paint as much of this leg as I can using this kind of following the contours of the print technique. Such as it is. And then maybe I'll take break a little bit early and get an opinion about whether this is kind of what they had in mind or not. Because I know that Alexis and Nicole, the DM, and one of the other members of Dice and Dungeons had kind of an idea of what they wanted this to look at like. And I don't know if I'm accomplishing what they were thinking or not. Excuse me. I'm quiet here as I am attempting to make little lines of paint. Contours that are present in the print. And it's interesting. Sometimes it really depends sometimes on the orientation too. You can see some in one direction and alternate and it look different in another. Anyway, yeah, we started painting dungeon tiles and minifigs, and that's how this stream got started. And it became relaxing painting with dice and dungeons. And sure. And I have to say, honestly, it's not always relaxing painting for me, especially on Submarine Wednesday. I paint my 1960s vintage Renoir submarine, or attempt to anyway, because that model has been a source of a lot of frustration. Finding the pieces, getting the pieces to fit, painting a tiny little detail on parts of it, finding that after you paint them, they don't fit again, and you have to refit them again. Just a lot of manipulation and actually even fabrication of parts to make things work. But it's coming along, and if I can, for the next couple of weeks, make kind of a breakthrough in terms of getting some parts that don't fit to fit, and if I can get that to happen, I should be able to make some pretty rapid progress on the model. The parts that are done look pretty good, though. Not this. I'm talking about the submarine. I don't know. Again, I'm not sure if this is at all what they had in mind or not. I get this one leg kind of painted, just highlighting the contours kind of the, I guess, the musculature, or in this case, the fungasature. And if it is what they have in mind, then I'll do the arms and the other leg. And if it isn't, paint over it and start again. Now, this is either coming along well, or it is a total waste of time because I'm getting it wrong. Yeah, maybe I'll take a break early. Maybe I'll take a break a little early just to do a check on is this at all what I'm trying to accomplish or not. Is the patterning right? Is the color right? Best thing is I say at least once every stream. I think this is the second time I'm saying it in this stream. Is that because it's paint, can always paint over it. This brush is now kind of gobbled up. So what I might end up doing is I never did the flip for who. Is I'm going to take stop this at the moment. I'm thinking, looking at this, that's not too bad to begin with, but it needs kind of a greenish color. You know, this undercoat, this kind of beige color, I think is not too bad, but I'm not sure what I've got in terms of greens. You know, I don't want to just use the bright green that I use for the base of the land shark and the demon frog. So those where I chop. And the green wash might be the right color, but it's hard to control. You know, I mean, if I could just like green wash the whole thing, maybe gray would look okay on it. Maybe the light gray overlaying this. That might work. I'm not sure what else I've got. There aren't too many. I don't have very many green colors. I mean, I got a lot of green colors, right? But none of them are like this goblin green. It's got kind of yellow in it. That might be okay as kind of an addition to that, or maybe these are way too pretty. Thick green's not too bad. I've used that quite a lot for things. Even the flat green is got a lot of yellow in it, but it's pretty dark. And I don't know if they want us to look in the dark side or not. I'm thinking, you know, the goblin green and the flat green are not too bad. But I started this model with kind of a little trepidation, not knowing where I was going. You know, painting, I'm going to keep that on screen so you can kind of see how it's coming along. not really quite knowing. Nicole looks at it and says, "Oh, I do this, this, and this," and she's an artist, a real artist, and so was talking about things that I can't do because I can't do them. I don't have the skill and the talent for that. But I'm thinking maybe just like dry brushing, if I could pull that off. Little splotches of either the wash. Dry brushing is too dry, nothing's coming off. And there's some on the brush, but it's not really coming off on the model. But I think that actually might work. I'm going to try that, just to try it. Because this has the right color. It's just this yellowish. We use it for algae in our sewers, and so that works pretty well. I think that might be decent. Okay, I'm going to take a break. And what I'm going to use that break to do is to show that to them, my critics. It does, but it needs to be an add-on. What we need to do is we need to print a totally separate hat. Maybe, oh yeah, that can be a whole big thing for the rosin printer. Is accessories, right? Is printing a bunch of accessories, hats, maybe like handbags, even better, the the kind of bags that you get when you go to tourist shops. Something like that. So this could, I think, if it had, I think it needs a pointy hat, to show up among the antlers here. And I think a tourist bag would look really good, a big one, with a happy face logo or a little pig or something. So I was practicing with some paint, different paint colors here, tried to get some striping in, and then I got the green washout and just very lightly touched it to make it look kind of mossy. And I think that worked. I think that's going to be okay, but I don't know. I have to get an expert opinion from the overlords of Dice and Dungeons, if that's coming along okay. And if so, I'll get the legs and the arms and the body, and I need to do the feet and hands in something kind of yellowish color, maybe, with highlighting on it, especially the horns here, the inside of the mouth. I think I'm actually going to do green rather than red. But I need to find out if this is working or if I just need to repaint the whole thing. I could just abandon this. I could abandon this model and say I can't do it. Whatever I do is going to be yucky, and go back to doing the submarine, but that would be wrong. But I am going to take a break early after I do the flip, because I haven't done a flip for who yet. I'm going to take my break early and get some feedback on the painting here about how that's going. And they'll say, oh, that looks all right. And then they'll say, oh yeah, that looks fine. That's good. I would do this and this. And then they'll just chuck it. It'll be tossed. It'll be tossed in the bin of forgotten toys, that kind of thing. So I'll set that down. Oh yeah, let me show you how this came out. This is the finished demon frog. Okay, and we always show them in this orientation. I'm going to change it up. I'm going to go this way. The shark will be on the right, and the frog will be on the left. My, you are looking fine now that you are fully painted. Well, thank you. You've been looking fine for quite some time because you were fully painted back on Monday. Yes, I know. I was way ahead of you. Well, I was almost done on Monday, but I didn't have my base painted, but now I'm done. Well, you want to be friends yet, even though you are now fully painted? Yes, we can still be friends, even though now I am fully painted. That's good. Oh, no, I can't resist. It has to happen whenever I am on screen. Dum, 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 dum. Yeah, sorry about that. So anyway, yeah, they've met and they're friends, and for some reason they are not in the water but on a grassy plain, and not in lava but on the grassy plain. Anyway, there they are. Pretty cool. So that got to use some time. It's always important to waste time on relaxing painting with Dice and Dungeons, so that I can avoid doing relaxing painting. So I'm going to flip this again. This has become a real favorite flipper thing. Nope, just one flip and it's on the floor. So that was a failure. A failed flip. I guess I'll flip this instead. Yeah, those are pretty decent flips. And I will be back about 12:15. I hope it doesn't mess up people's schedules. I know I usually break from like 12 to 12:30, but I don't want to paint. I don't want to go much further on this model without getting some feedback about whether it's looking okay or not. And if not, what I can do to change it. So, off to get expert advice. We'll see you in about 25 to 30 minutes. Well, back from break, and I'm glad that I took the break when I did, not just because I needed a break, but because I was told I was, in fact, getting it wrong. This sort of beigey color that I was using as the stripes should be dark red, like the original tree was. So I tried to do something different, and anyway, it didn't turn out. So now I'm going to pull out the red. This is very close to being used up, so I'm not sure about the consistency of the paint. We'll find out. But I need to repaint the stripes on that leg, and then this is the color that I need to use on the rest of the model, the other leg and the arms and the chest and the back and stuff. And I'll just see how it goes. Yeah. Painting little stuff, little lines on things. Giving this a good stir. This has been kind of like a bottomless vial of paint, almost, in that it there always seems to be some left. It got really thick at one point, and I thinned it out. And we'll see if it's too thin. If it's too thin, it's going to run all over the place and be a mess. I don't know. Let me see. The counter is counting. The counter is counting, which to me says it's supposed to be playing. I'll push this button. That's supposed to be a button that makes it work. And the counter is still counting. So I don't know. If it's not playing, I'm not sure what the problem is, because everything on my end looks like it's supposed to be working. Might not be. Let me push some buttons and see what happens. What bad, right? I mean, how could it be any worse if it's not playing? Yeah, this even says that it's working. Let's be now playing. It says it is playing. I don't know why you can't hear it. The program says it's playing. The counter says it's playing. The little bar graph says it's playing. But this says it's not playing. Anything happening now? All right, I'm clicking on buttons. Clicking on things, and it says it's playing, but it's not. So I don't know what to do. I really don't know what to do when it's not doing what it says it's doing. No, can't get it to work. Yeah, but if I go silent, then there's nothing happening. Okay, I'm just gonna flip this paint bottle because it's in my hands. And I didn't snatch the bottle. Here we go. Flipping paint. So I put my head magnifier back on. so I can see where I am slopping paint. Painting stripes is not easy for me. For some reason, they just, I don't know, they don't stay where I want them to. But what I'm planning to do, what I'm going to try to do is all of this sort of beige kind of color is I'm going to try to turn, maybe it's not even on camera. Here, move that up so I've got a bigger field of view. So I'm going to try to turn, well, nothing's even focusing there, trying to turn that beige into red. So I'm just going to be painting a stripe over a stripe. And that should be straightforward and easy, but I'm guessing since this is fungus, that the stripes are a little bit like ragged or uneven, that will be fine. You know, this is going really quite poorly. I don't know why the paint is gumming up on the brush. It's not coming off on the model. It's fairly thin. It shouldn't be doing that. Yeah, this is, I don't know. So it's not turning out as I was hoping it would. Just going to keep trying to turn that beige color into red without having too much of it show through, because then it'll be it'll look really different on each leg, and that will be noticeable. You would think it would be like painting by numbers, right? Because there's already paint in a spot, just painting over. Easier doing it the first time. Either get, I don't know. This is just not going very smoothly or well. Keep at it, and it might turn out okay. If not, we do have spray paint primer. And if worst comes to worst, there's gray. There's gray there. That it'll just all come back to be that color. So I was given all sorts of ideas about, what to do with the horns and the base, and it was like, oh, if you could do this, that would look really cool. And I said, oh yeah, if I could do that, that would look really cool. And then I walked away knowing that I wouldn't be able to do that. Probably isn't going to look all that cool, but I've got another hour and a half of painting to do, so I'm just going to be painting like red stripes on this thing in different places and with different levels of success. And we'll see how it goes. We will end up with something. If we want it to look gross, it might be a success because I'm more likely than not to look gross. The dogs are all excited about something. At least they're having fun. So as I'm painting this, repainting this really, covering up one color with another because it was done wrong. I'm going to not be painting on Monday, taking a day off because, why not? It's an unpaid holiday, much like my unpaid work days. Except I won't be doing relaxing painting. There are some other things that need to be done, and they need to be done on Monday. So I'm going to have to miss relaxing painting and do those other things instead. So just so you know, although relaxing painting happens Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays almost without fail, almost always on time, or close to being on time, on Monday, it will not be happening on time. In fact, it won't be happening at all. So I'll be missing you guys then. But I will be back on Wednesday with, you guessed it, Submarine Wednesday, doing some more painting and fitting and fabricating and who knows quite what. Not really sure quite exactly what will be happening because I'm getting close to the point where I can't get anything more done without doing some major modifications to a major piece of the submarine model. And I'm not sure how much of that I can do on stream. I could try. It would be not painting. It would be measuring and sanding and filing. Testing fit, retesting fit, until things finally came together. These lines are just really ragged. Usually this brush is really good at this sort of thing, and usually I'm not as bad at it. But on the other hand, you know, these are fungus lines. These aren't like racing stripe lines, right? So if they are ragged, that probably is more what we're trying to accomplish here than not. Anyway, that's kind of the red veining that we were going for. We being the entire Dice and Dungeons gang, me being the painter, or the attempted painter. Yeah, that's what we should call this. This is attempted painting by Dice and Dungeons. Entirely successful, but not entirely a disaster either. So it's kind of a middle ground between being really bad and being really, really bad. Try to even out some of these. I'm not going to play with it too much because then I'll get too much red on it. No, it's got red stripes instead of flesh-colored stripes. Mostly, pretty much, but mostly where I want them. So I'm just going to do the same thing on the other side, but the other side doesn't have the other color on it. So there's a little bit more leeway and give in terms of the location of the paint. I'm still pretty much following the contours that show up in the print, 3D print. Sinewy, edges of muscles or something. Somehow thinking that this is meant to show up as an adversary. I'm just guessing, although it could be friendly. I mean, it could be a friendly fungus monster, right? This could be a friendly fungus monster. It might not attack us. It might, since if we meet it in a sewer, it might attempt to guide us through some dangerous places in the sewer. If we were to meet it in the woods, it might show us where to find fresh water or ripe berries or something. It might be a helpful and friendly creature. One of those misunderstood kinds of things that happens when things look scary, but they're not really. That's the kind of thing that's up to our dungeon master to decide. My job is to just put paint on it and hope that it doesn't look too stupid or gross or yucky or whatever. Too impossibly poorly done to be usable. You never know. But I might be painting our next good friend. Certainly use some. You can never have too many friends in a sewer. Well, I mean, you could. You could be in the sewer, right? And there's nothing down there except sewer gas and sewer slime and things, and then all your friends just decide to drop in. And one of them brings like a bag of crisps or chips, and another one brings like 2 liters of some sort of caffeinated, heavily sweetened beverage. But there's like 8 of them, right? And that's all they bring. And you're in the sewer. So what are you going to do? Like you just pop over to the nearest like all night party store or something, or order a pizza. And they're just popping in, they're expecting like a party because they're all just your friends, and they just didn't bring anywhere near enough stuff to keep themselves fed at all. So there you are. You suddenly have too many friends in the sewer. So that could happen. So the main difference between these 2 legs right now is this one had a little bit of green wash put on it. I'm going to do the same to this one when it dries. Just a light touch, dry brush kind of touch of green wash, just to make it look a little more slimy, just a little more slimy. This is looking, I don't know. It'll do. Hopefully it'll do. So now I had paint blobbed all over the tip of the brush, and it's not adhering to the brush at all. We didn't need to bother wearing the, well, yeah. If I didn't have my head magnifiers on, I couldn't see this much at all, really. Anyway, that's what it is. I think it's starting to, it's starting to set up there in the. Squeeze some fresh paint out fairly soon. Doing the same thing with the arms here because they have contours that I can work with to guide where the red goes. Yeah, so this isn't nearly as cool as the tree that was done before in terms of the stripes and all. But I think it might work okay. I think it's giving the impression that they're looking for, kind of red, veiny, stripy kind of look. Cole was able to do some really amazing detail that just got everywhere. Definitely not careful there. Fortunately, it's in the back, and so it might not show as much as it would otherwise. I don't think this is quite coming out looking exactly like they wanted it, but given my intermediate skill level here, it's coming out about as well as it can. Needs to follow here. One thing is a little surprising about this is there's some very delicate parts. These antlers and the fingers is that I have not yet snapped any of them off. That's actually a little bit surprising because that's the kind of thing that frequently happens. Last 2 weeks ago, when I was painting the Dragonkin group, snapped off a sword blade by knocking it over. It went flying and disappeared into the land of missing socks. So it just totally disappeared. Searched all over and could not find it. And then I knocked the hilt off of another sword and then broke another piece. And it was just like one breaking incident after the other. So the hands and the fingers are going to be yellowish with green stripes. That's the idiom, that the kind of thing we're working with there. Horizontal muscle lines. It's more like a 12 pack here, right? So that's kind of what it's called. They're oriented differently. I'm putting more of them on. Yeah, I got quiet and the music isn't playing. Sorry. I'm just trying to figure out really kind of what to do with this thing. Getting painted in a very non-traditional manner in order to represent some sort of fungus attack. That looks kind of stripy, doesn't it? Doesn't it look stripy? Sure how many more stripies I want to put all over it. I'm going to put the green wash on it, though. It just looks, it makes it look a little slimier. I think other than maybe like one or two other little spots like here, just sort of stop putting more on. And then I'm going to pick a yellow for the hands and feet and antlers. Let's see what I can do with this. I was very careful with the green wash. I was just dry brushing it on, so I don't want to get too much of this. So kind of just trying to do is just get a little bit of streakiness in it and to tone down the. Okay, it's leaking. That's good. Sort of tone down a little bit the bland look of the blah look of the undercolor. So I'm just trying to get the tiniest little bits on the brush. Just touch it. The greenish, kind of a greenish overtone. That's almost too much. It's just a slight greeniness. It's just a little bit of mossiness. More in the mouth. And that's not bad. It's kind of this. Then I have to decide on a yellow. Should have put my mug away over break. And I didn't eat anything. So I'm going to have a blood sugar crash. It's going to happen. It will. It just will. Yellow. I need a yellow. The yellow paints are really not very good coverage paints. That's kind of a bright yellow on that, on the. This kind of yellow to go with the green, but I'm thinking. If the green wash is on top of it, she just did this amazing job with all the veining. I don't know. Just can't replicate it. Use what's called deep yellow. And then I'm going to use goblin green for the stripes on the yellow. So I need to find those colors. Buff, that's not yellow. And it's yellow ochre. That's not even close. Yeah, deep yellow. Deep yellow. Yay. And then goblin green. These have not been used in quite a while. Excuse me. I'm allergic to painting after break. It almost always happens. I'm gonna have to give these a pretty good stir. So replicating what was done on this tree, okay, you can see where the yellow is with all the veining. It's going to be a little difficult to do on this because they're all spiky, right? So I'm going to paint them yellow. And what I think I'll be doing with the goblin green is like touching the points, right? Because I can't do the equivalent of veining on blobs. It isn't possible to do that because there's no blobs. They're just pointy things. So I'm hoping that this covers fairly well. We'll find out. Start on the antlers because where they start and stop is pretty obvious. This is going to be, I don't have to get it even because it's going to be, I want it to look blobby and uneven and so on. But there's just a lot of surface area, right? It's going to be really easy to like totally miss a part. Just little. Putting paint on and then rotating it and finding spots that weren't painted that looked like they were painted from one side but not the other. And most importantly, not putting any pressure on it because these are very fragile. Really, really thin bits of the rosin print. I think this yellow is going to look okay, though. It's going to complement the green pretty well. It'll be, hi, green. You're looking very greeny and fine today. I am paying you a compliment. I am complimenting your greenness. Have you ever been to a place and they've given you I'm going to give you a complimentary soft drink. And then you get the soft drink and it just sits there, right? It doesn't compliment you at all. So what's up with that? So in that same sort of vein, taking things literally, and then when you do, they come out sounding silly. To say that I haven't done this routine yet, right? Is signs. Okay. So you see the sign that says garage sale, right? And you say, oh, having a garage would be kind of a nice thing. Then I have a car for some reason, and during bad weather in winter. It gets covered with ice and snow, and it's, you know, it'd be nice to have a garage. So you go to the garage sale and you'd say, one garage, please. He'd just look at you and say, we're not selling any garages. Where are you coming up? What do you think you're going to do? Get a garage? And it said, well, the sign said garage sale. And I thought about it and decided that having a garage would be a good thing. So I came to get one, especially since it's on sale. You know, kind of a discount garage. And that sign just basically turned out to be a lie. You could not get the garage at the garage sale. Not at any price, much less on sale, right? Pretty disappointing and misleading, I must say. So you could think of other things like that, like you see a sign that says moving sale, and you go, that would be interesting. I wonder how fast it's moving, and whether in order to buy anything, like you have to get out in front of it and catch it as it moves up to and maybe past you. Do you have to move right along with it? You know, at the same speed in the same direction in order to buy something at that. And then, you know, you get an address and you go there and it's like nothing is moving, much less the whole sale. Maybe there's like a whirly gig, you know, they're in the yard or something and the whirly gig is spinning and that's the only thing that's moving. And once again, the line, the sign was lying. It's not a moving sale at all. It's like a fairly stationary sale. That would be something too. You know, if the sign said stationary sale and you said, I could use some stationery. Oh, yeah. And then you'd get confused and you'd say, what does that mean? Does that mean that I'm going to get pieces of paper with my name on it? You know, personalized stationery? Or does it mean that nothing is moving? Okay, that everything is standing still at the sale. You don't know until you get there. But it doesn't matter because you've never seen a sign that says stationary sale. Well, maybe you have. Maybe, you know, I should take that back. You might have like, it might have been like an office supply store or something. But it's probably unlikely. But you almost certainly have seen a sign for a moving sale. And I'm sure, just like I was, in the story that I'm telling, not in real life. But what's real life anyway? I mean, we could get onto that. I could digress onto that, but I want to keep talking about signs anyway. So yeah, I mean, moving sale signs are almost always a lie. Nothing there is moving, much less the entire sale. Just like you could never get a garage. You can never buy a garage at a garage sale. I shouldn't say never. It might actually have happened once. Maybe somebody can tell the story about how it really did happen, that they bought a garage on sale after seeing a sign for it. So there's that. There's yard sale. You know, you might think, well, having a yard would be kind of nice. You know, and if I could buy the whole yard just all at once, you'd wonder if, you know, if it's the kind of, if they do delivery and installation, you'd have to wonder that for sure when you're looking at the yard sale. The other thought I had, is that what they mean is that they sell a yard of things. And there might be some things you might want to buy by the yard to do that. But if you went to one of them, you would probably find out that you definitely could not buy a yard, with grass and flowers and trees and stuff. So that sign was probably wrong. It might be possible. It might be possible to buy a yard of something. Like they might have surplus cloth, a bolt of cloth that they're selling by the yard. That might be possible. So that sign has probably a better chance than the other ones I've talked about, not being a lie. In that it was talking about something that wasn't going to happen. But the one that really gets me the most is, and you've probably seen these, is the Parade of Homes. Yep, think about that. So here's the story. The story is I saw these signs that said Parade of Homes. There was more than one sign. It just, pointed in this direction. And then you go and you get yourself a good spot right on the curb, right? Maybe you get yourself like a little lawn chair or something, and a cooler with some soft drinks, and you set yourself up and you wait for the Parade of Homes. And then you sit there for hours and hours and hours. You might even stay overnight thinking you got the date wrong or something. But you don't see even a single home go by. Not a single one, much less a whole parade of homes. I find that the most disappointing lying sign. Because, parades are kind of a cool thing. And having a parade of homes would be really neat. But no. Nada. Nicto. None. 0. 9. No homes parade. Okay. Well, there's the yellow. And that's a pretty decent yellow. It's not too terribly bright. So it should stay toned down. Okay. I'm going to let that dry a little bit before I start putting the green on it. And while I'm waiting for that to dry, I'm going to get some brown out. It's wearing a rag around its waist there. Try to find a good rag color. You think we want it to be kind of a dark brown, but we also want it to be able to show like dirt. So I'm thinking just this red brown with a brown wash. You get the wash on kind of heavy and blobby. I was thinking maybe even a lighter brown would work with the brown wash, because the brown wash could make it look really spotty and yucky, things like that. So let me see. Maybe there is one that would be better as an undercolor. It's the cork brown, beastie brown. That's a good name, beastie brown. Yeah, I'll just try the red brown. I've used that as the base for a lot of these models, and it works pretty well. In fact, I think that's on here. I think I used it on here. I think that's red brown with a dark wash on it. You need to be a little careful around the edges. I don't want to get it all over the model. I might put my head magnifiers on to do this. I'm going to use a slightly larger than the tiniest brush, because there's a lot of surface area to cover. This goes on and gets really kind of a light color, and then it gets darker as it dries. That works out okay. I can get using the paint in the bottle cap. I like to use the paint in the bottle cap so I don't waste it. I guess it's a good thing it's dressed, right? It's not like it's not naked moss or fungus. These head magnifiers not really helping at all. That and twisting and turning you need just to get this thing oriented right. Yeah. So it's not supposed to be well dressed. So not terribly interested necessarily in getting the paint on evenly. I just want to make sure I get the edges done kind of okay. It would actually be good if the paint were lumpy. Yeah, and there's always areas, depending on if you're right or left-handed, decide that they're going to be a pain to get to. That was one of them. But it'll do. Raggedy edge on the back there. That's good. It's almost tempting to get some sort of grit or dirt or something. And plop it onto the surface of this before it dries. But I don't have any of that handy. There's a lot of it outside. There's plenty of sand out there, but I'm not there. So can't get it. Okay, so now it's clothed, and I'll be putting a wash on that to make it look uneven and dirty and stuff. On time. Oh, I got a lot of time. Way too much time. Yeah, so I need to clean this. And I need to now, what I need to do is get some green onto the yellow. And like I said, I can't replicate this kind of striping stuff because it's not a smooth surface. So I will get some green and touch it to, like, kind of make it look unevenly and stripy and stuff, and touch it on the fingers. I don't want to completely cover them because then they'd be green, but I just want to add some greenness to it. So I'm going to use the teeny brush and get this get this goblin green, I guess, is what I'm using. But I need a huge stirring because you can see how uneven it is. It's dark green here and light green here. Yeah, it's been sitting and not been stirred. Yeah, it's fun listening to that, isn't it? If I get the frequency right, it makes everything kind of shake and waver. Used to happen all the time until I put it on 3 layers of foam to cut down the vibrations. Now I have to work at it in order to get it. Okay, well, I think that's about as good as it's going to get. And so let's squeeze some out and just sort of carefully apply it to create green highlights. I want little green highlights on these yellow parts. Yeah, kind of like that. Little bits of unevenness. It's about the best I can do. And the same sort of thing, I can do some veining on the feet. It's not quite the same as the effect on the moss, the fungus tree that we ran into once. But it's, kind of just want to make sure that there's some greenness here and there. Get to the inside of the hand also, because that might show depending on the camera angle, right? Okay, let's see what we can do on the other hand. On the other hand, and again, try to get some on the inside here. It's a little bit harder to do. It's harder to reach the inside. Just a little bit of highlighting and striping. So I'm going to cover up the yellow, but it needs to look kind of greenish as well. Back. Should do some on the side here. Side of the foot. Yeah, it's interesting and kind of even on camera. That's pretty cool. It's always a surprise when I'm doing this kind of thing. To look up and see that I actually am on camera. Because more often than not, when I'm doing this sort of like little touching kind of stuff, being on camera is not something that happens. Okay. So I think I got that effect down. Now up on the antlers here, sure, I think I just need to kind of scatter it around. Okay. Green, little green spotless, striplets kind of here, hither and yon, all across the antlers. Because there's no real place to put stripes. I mean, really. But I think I can give the green touches. Okay. I managed to do that pretty well. I stuck my finger in its pants. I'm not sure if that will end up being a feature or a bug. These are not helping. Just not. No, I can't see it all. Doing these tiny little bits, and it's like too much green, too little green, green here, green there, too heavy, too light. Give the impression of it having some green on it. Well, it's getting spotted with green anyway. And since I'm whipping the brush in the direction of the little spikes, it's, kind of being spiky about it. More down the center here. Well, the yellow's still showing through, and that's an important thing. But it definitely has some greenness about it. So I'm going to do the other side, and we'll see how that goes. See if I can do the same sort of effect. Doesn't have to be perfectly symmetric. That's not what we're going for here, but we want greenness scattered in a somewhat stripy way along the fungus antlers. And on the base, I'm supposed to do something really fancy with the base. I'm supposed to make it look like mycelium. So I think what I'm going to do with that is paint a dark brown and then get kind of an ivory. I'm not going to use pure white because sometimes that doesn't look good. Maybe the ivory, which is pretty decent, and then they're going to kind of irregularly radiate out from the feet of this beast, like kind of like lightning bolts, kind of radiating out from where its feet touch the ground. The right quantity of green blobs, stripes. Get it amongst the antlers here. And I thought about putting a green wash on the antlers and the yellow parts. And I'm thinking, no, I'm not going to. Use that green wash that I put on the rest of it. Yeah, I think that's okay. That kind of came out all right. Now, that's where I put my finger. Now it's just a lump in the paint. A couple of spots, maybe like underneath here. Could put a little splash of green there. So much of it just depends on what angle you're looking at. Sometimes it looks fine, and sometimes, not. But yeah, I think I'm going to leave that, and then I'm going to paint the base because I have like a half hour yet at least. If I get the base coat on, the dark brown, then I can mess with the mycelium maybe yet if it dries quickly enough. So I'm going to use a small brush to paint around the toes just so I can get that done. And then I'm going to use this bigger brush to fill in the rest of it. It's got a very large base. Hi. Dingo, yes. I mean, that's how it turned out. I was told I needed it to paint red stripes on it, not the tan stripes that I was doing. And then I gave it a little bit of a green wash and then did the antlers, that and that. So it's turning out okay. I'm seeing maybe a spot where I should have had another little bit more red there, another stripe. I don't know. Maybe I'll try to do that yet. Just see the detailing and touching up. The things are coming back. I'm going to be going for another little more than a half hour. And hopefully this thing will be mostly done. I'm going to put this on some of the sticky tack because I'm going to be painting around the edges, right? I should remember that. Can't paint around the edges if I'm holding it on the edges. So I'm just going to use I'm not going to use this for that. I'm going to use just this other pointed brush here to paint around the feet. I just need to get around the feet. This is a way oversized base for this model. My instructions are to paint it dark brown and then attempt to paint radiating mycelium emanating from the feet. It's either growing up from the mycelium. That's one way you could tell the story. It's rising up from the mycelium in the dirt, or the mycelium is spreading from its feet and it's going to grow more of these things. Maybe it could be both. I mean, it could be. It could be that it's sprung up from the mycelium in the dirt and that it's propagating. We'll let the DM make up that story. I'm just raising the options, the possibilities. I can't say that I much enjoyed painting this because it was doing things I'm not terribly good at. And I'm not, if Nicole had done this, it would have turned out to look, it just would have looked better. It's hard to describe how it would have looked better. But if you were to do like a side-by-side comparison of something she did and I did, you would see that it would be like the stripes would be in just the right places and just the right width, and as opposed to there's a stripe there because that's where my brush hit and I drew it across. But yeah, I did the best I could, and I hope it will look okay. I'm not wanting this to be necessarily. I don't mind if there are brush marks on this. I'll put it that way because this is supposed to be like lumpy dirt, and I'm using a very dark brown, and so a wash isn't going to show up much on this. I'm not going to be able to do much about texturing this, so I'll have to live with whatever effect the mycelium gives it once I attempt to paint that on. Yeah. I really like the color of this paint. I have to say, it looks like melted chocolate. Even when it dries, it's a pretty nice color, but the paint itself is just really pretty. Get the edges here. It rearranged the Tokyo subway system. That's pretty good. The largest living thing in the world. I've read this, so I don't know if it's actually true or not. Of course, wherever it was written was claiming it was true. That the largest living organism in the world is actually in northern Wisconsin and the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, I think it was. A gigantic mushroom. The mycorrhizae go on for like just hundreds of square miles, and they've done genetic testing on it and determined that it is in fact the same organism. At least that's the story. I mean that could actually be true. I think that's pretty cool. We probably have no idea really how important all of these things growing in the soil and the air and everything are to keeping things going. It's like the people who are talking about gut bacteria now and how your personality depends upon what kind of microbes are growing in your intestines. I'm not sure how true that is or whether it will pan out completely, but it's kind of fun to think about. I don't. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Actually, that will be true. Once this thing is myceliumed, and there are other ones like this, they will know each other by testing their mycorrhizae, and then they'll know whether they're related mushrooms or not. And yeah, it might be able, it might even be able to detect the little fungus spores and things on you and in you and be able to tell. Excuse me. I need to get some dark brown wash. I think this will work. Maybe the umber wash. The umber wash is a little darker. I'm not going to shake it too much. I want this to be fairly globby. And it's got this rag, and I need to make it look dirty. There is a mushroom called wolf fart. I'm going to have to look that up. That has to be, that's just amazing. Sometimes, and how would somebody know if that's what it was really like? Were they following wolves around going, sniffing behind a wolf? That would be a thing. Somebody was sniffing behind a wolf and, found a mushroom that if you crushed it smelled the same. That would be pretty amazing and pretty disturbing both at the same time. I'm trying to find a brush that will kind of give me the effect I want. This is just on the loincloth thing here, and I want it to look... I want to use this brown wash on it to make it look just uneven and kind of dirty. I might even have to pull, if it doesn't work, I might have to pull out like a dark brown paint and put splotches on it. But generally, this has looked okay. I used a lighter brown under color, base color, just so that the wash would show better on it. So we'll see how it looks. It might be a little too shiny after the wash dries, in which case I'll just put splotches of other colors on it. Sometimes this works really well. Yeah, I don't think it's going to be too bad. I think it might work okay. It seems to be, it's like draining into the contours pretty well. Anyway, we'll let that dry and then see what turns out. A good hard bristle brush like that is really pretty good for that. I actually have a jar of old toothbrushes. There must be about 7 or 8 of them in there that has been used on occasion. I use this one too. I can only use this on very large surfaces because the bristles spread out so much. This is like a disposable brush that was designed to be used for fiberglass rosin. I did radio-controlled airplane flying once a long time ago. It was great fun. But the inside of the compartment that holds the fuel tank is usually coated with the rosin, not the fiberglass mat, but the rosin, the fiberglass rosin, because it's one of the few things that the methanol fuel doesn't melt. It doesn't dissolve, and if you get a leak in your fuel tank, it dissolves the epoxy that you use to put your model together, and the next thing you know is you've got the engine goes flying because it's in the front, and so is the fuel tank, and you end up with parts of a plane scattered all over the place. Anyway, that's why I've got that brush. Is I used that ages ago for that purpose. So the mycelium. Yeah, I'm going to use this, and I really don't know. I have no clue really about how this is going to turn out. I guess I'm going to use the little brush, and it's going to start kind of heavy, and then just like radiate in weird little directions, unevenness, and so on. Oh, that's okay. Sorry. I'm rotating this, and when I painted the base, I was looking at it from this direction. Then I rotate it and look at it from this direction, and it's wasn't painted. It's not much, but it was really obvious when I looked at it. Do the same thing on this one. This one seems to be better, probably because I painted it directly from the front. It's been okay. I don't know if I'd want to do that. That just sounds like you'd have to have a well-contained painting area and some clothes you didn't mind ever never wearing again. But speaking of splatters, since you are, one of my top five favorite artists is Jackson Pollock. I absolutely love his splatter paintings. He got like randomness nailed. Just some of them are just amazing in terms of the splatters, almost fractal like in some ways. So I guess what he did is he just sort of stood on a. I think he just stood on the canvas and got angry or drunk or both or something and splattered paint around. It came out looking like art. Yeah, splatter paints. The thing. Oh, like we grew up with this Spyro paint. I can't remember what it's called. We first ran into it at one of the state fairs. Is it's just a you get a piece of cardboard and put it on the top of a spinner thing, and it spins around, and you dribble paint onto it, and it makes lines and splatters and things like that. And it was, I think you got like 3 for a quarter or something way back when, but it was amazing. We had like dozens of these things. In fact, we liked it so much that I had an erector set with a motor. That was one of the things that it had was a motor, and I built one. That was kind of cool. I did that when I was a kid. Is got the motor and put a shaft on it, and got a cardboard box, of course, right? And made a spatter paint machine. And I can't remember what we used for paint. Maybe old house paint. Really can't recall. I'm sure I'm sure my parents did not splurge on any kind of special paint. And we just had, what do we use? We use like 3x5 cards that you get, file cards that you get at stationery stores. Speaking of stationery, which we were earlier. Um, yeah, so I made a spatter paint machine, and we had fun with that. We just spattered paint all over the place inside the box. It was well confined for the most part. I am pretty sure we must have used some sort of like latex house paint, because my mother would not have. She would just not have allowed us to use like an oil-based paints. We were not a wealthy family, and if our clothes came spattered with spatter paint on the spatter paint machine, we would have just had paint spattered clothes. It would have been the way it was. But yeah, I was talking with my brother a while ago and reminiscing. You do that when you get older, and you got nothing else to talk about because And then, yeah, he remembered that because we played with it quite a lot. One of the things I did as a kid that worked out was this spatter paint thing. So there is so it's either mycelium from which it is emerging, or it is mycelium that is spreading out from it. But it doesn't much matter, does it? It's going one way or the other. I don't know. What do you think? How does it look? Does it look kind of, does it look decent? Kind of, I mean, there's some spots here that are kind of blobby. So it's clearly not an expert paint job. Too bad. I think I can, if I kind of a little bit. I want it to kind of fill the area, but I don't want it to just like be all there is. Could be doing weird little branches like this all over the place, and I'm not sure it adds that much to it. Yeah, I think I'm going to just leave that. How did the lung cloth come out? Yeah, it could be better. I'm going to try a different wash. Neat. And they're not, but I think that gives the effect that we want. Okay, clean that brush. The last bit I need to, I was going to do a little bit of red. There was one spot on the leg that looked like it just needed a stripe. Just, just absolutely needed to have a stripe on it. See if I can find that again. Just here. Yeah, it didn't take much, just a little bit to fill in the space. It was worth this. Just the little bit of paint. Just to fill the spot. Otherwise, I think it's not too bad. Okay, I'm going to leave that alone. And now I'm going to. I know the loincloth is just not like a huge feature, but we want it to look really scabby. So I'm going to get a slightly different, darker reddish wash. That's pretty cool. Let's show up. Wow. Yeah, of course. Yeah, it's like invisible ink. We did that. I remember that from like way back when. You paint it on, and then when it heats up a little bit, it browns, turns brown, right? That's a really neat effect, though. Like that. Yeah, I'm going for bad leather from a craft fair. So I'm just going to do that, and then I'm going to show off our dungeon tiles before I close today, because I like to do that at least once during the show. The stream, the whatever. I guess it's a show. This is a darker wash. It's darker to begin with, but it's also darker because the pigment is settling out on it. If I'm going to use it as a real wash, I mean, kind of a uniform wash on it. It's the color we use on our wooden models, dungeon tiles. They're not made out of wood. They're printed PLA. We paint them to look like wood. And this particular wash works really well on the brown. But it's almost empty, okay, and it's starting to gum up, and it would not be good for that purpose, but it's good for this. There's enough in there that I think if it were thinned, it would still work. But for this purpose, that's what I need. So I'm going to just dab this on and make it look a little like really well-worn, used, gross leather. I think that looks a little bit more like what I want. I think it could use like splotches, right? Splotches are always good to make things look dirty. And then dark at the bottom. It always has to be dark at the bottom because dripping, oozing, and oozing and staining. Yeah, you know why soy sauce? Yeah, I've done that by accident. Nothing like spilling a little soy sauce on a piece of paper. But yeah, if you get paper, they vary so much in terms of their absorbency. And, paper towels will absorb the best, but they don't have the right texture. But yeah, that's a cool thing to get, especially around the edges, to make it look like it's either burned or just like rotted away, And if you're a good dungeon master, you pull those things off and then your players are amazed. I'm going to call this kind of what we were going for. Do you? That's really cool that you get into costume. Do you make your players do that too? That they do sometimes? I always dress the same way. I am boring. I wear a gray sweatshirt and a vest, a brown vest. And why do I do that? Well, I do that because that's what I wore for the first 2 sessions we ever did. Looking like Hagrid is pretty cool. I have to admit, I can't. Mine doesn't grow. It just looks like gray, patchy fuzz. It's just not good. No, I used to have a mustache a long time ago when mustaches were in vogue, and that was okay. And then it turned gray, except it didn't really turn gray. Anyway, it was just not working. Anyway, this is an example of the dungeon tiles that we make. These are painted base coated, but they aren't washed yet. We generally just finish these by putting a dark gray wash on them to highlight the indentations, the mortar lines, and to make them look worn. Yeah, I'll tell you about that. These are 3D printed. If you look at them, the wall and the floor are printed as one single solid piece, so that some of the earlier versions, we first started with the wall and the floor were printed separately, and we epoxied them together. And you drop them and they'd pop off, even with epoxy. And it wasn't always possible to get a perfect 90-degree angle. I even made some templates and some things to hold them in place. But then our DM reconfigured all of them, and so they're printed as one solid piece. They're all 2x2s. And then underneath here, you can see this bit. There's a little bit of a gap there so you can actually see. There are little ball magnets, tiny little ball magnets that go into the corners. There's 8 in each one. And what's nice about the ball magnets is they rotate, okay? And so they're in little wells in the bottom of these, and then the plate is put down on top of it. And, you can sort of get dungeon tiles that are called magnetized, but it means that there's a magnet in the bottom that sticks to metal. Well, this doesn't stick to metal. They stick to each other like that. You can actually hear the balls click. And so you can just reconfigure them any way you want, just real quickly. Yeah, they look like a hallway. We have made like entire rooms. There's floor pieces without walls so that you can extend this and make a room out of it. And we've done some other things, like if you watch underneath here, there's some river tiles. We made a river. There are some that have like cauldrons in the middle of the room, and the cauldron can have a flame coming out of it. So that there's that. And recently we have started making street tiles, so that since we paint them both on the inside. If you had a room, okay, and it's painted on the inside, we paint them on the outside too, so we can actually make like a a street scene where you've got a building with a street and you can see the walls on the outside and everything. So these come off really neat, but the fact that they're like single piece, very, very sturdy, and the magnets really work well because they're kind of cool. So that's actually how this stream started. Was these got printed and they needed to be painted so they could go on our D&D stream, and that's yeah. So this is really the basis of all of that. And sometimes underneath me on the scroll, you can see some of the smaller dungeons that we created out of these. We make three basic kinds. There is this is rough stone. We also have dungeons that are made out of cut stone, so that they're not blobby, but they're smooth surfaces and they're like brick shapes and things. And the floors are smoother. And then we make, I wish I had one. I should bring one out so I could show them off. We do wood. They're wooden floors, and the way they're printed is there's actually really good wood grain that shows once they're washed with the ink. So the wood grain shows, and then the walls themselves are stucco with wood beams, and they take a little longer to paint. Okay, I mean they do, because you have to paint many different colors and keep the edges clean and all of that, but they look really nice. There's a necromancy blood magic layer there. So you can see that there's doors. We have doors with lintels. The doors actually open and close. They're hinged, pin hinged. So those are pretty cool. And there it is in green. And there's round walls, so we can make alcoves and things like that, or even round rooms. That well in the middle, there's a long story behind the well in the middle. We was originally printed as 4 separate pieces that had to be glued together. And now it's being printed as one piece. There's a fire sigil on one of the cut stone walls that goes into that dungeon, the cauldron in the middle. There is a magnet-based flame that goes into that, so you can go flame on, and you can create a flame in the effect in the center of your room. Take this off and set it down. There we go. Seeing it from the top, it's kind of weird, but that's how it turned out. And I hope it is what they liked. So yeah, we've done those, and they have with some frequency shown up in our stream. So that's how this stream actually started, was painting the tiles that we ended up using for our dungeons. And then we started doing minifigs, got a rosin printer. We're printing our own, like the shark and the frog. Ooh, that's really nice. Yeah, nice swirly, the kind that have concentric circles in them. Yeah, actually another batch of minifigs has come out of the rosin printer just yesterday. I'm not even sure what they are. I'll find out next week. But I am now at the end of 2-ish. This stream goes Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays from more or less 10 until more or less 2 Eastern Daylight Time, U.S. time. Really nice chatting with you today. I hope you have a really good evening, and that the sunset over the hills in Scotland is beautiful for you. I will not be back on Monday. I'm taking Monday off. I will be doing Submarine Wednesday on Wednesday, and we'll see what I can accomplish, getting to the point where I'm going to be doing less painting and more kvetching about parts that don't fit and things that need to be done. Yeah, that would be great. So I'm going to be doing this again Wednesday and Friday next week from more or less 10 until more or less 2. And if you can, yeah, thank you. And if you can, check our D&D campaign that streams on Sunday with live chat at 2. And you can always catch it on YouTube or as a podcast if you want to catch up with some of the older episodes. But thank you, and hopefully we'll see you back next week, Wednesday, or sub Wednesday. We'll see how you like that. Thank you. Have a good evening.